This is my intro music. Welcome to the video. I hope you like it lots, so don't forget to subscribe and click the thumbs up button. Now let's react.
Hey, hi, hello there, and welcome to an episode of An Anthropologist Watches Ned Fulmer. Dirty, dirty Ned. Several of you asked me to do this, and I don't remember who Ned Fulmer is. So, I had to go look up who this was. I wasn't a Try Guy fan. I remember who the Try Guys... I remember the Try Guys existed. So, all right, there you go. Roughly about 3 years ago, this guy, default white man, had an affair on his wife, whose name was Ariel, and the internet lost its shit. Now you know everything I know. All right, so because of that, several of you asked me about if I was going to go over this, and because many of you asked, I was like, yeah, sure. So what I did, fortunately, two of the channels I really enjoy watching, both being one of them, Psychology in Seattle, and the other one, Observe, both of them have covered this. So I went ahead and watched their take on these on this particular thing on Mr. Fulmer here. And then I also watched two other channels who I occasionally dip in on, especially when I need like a deeper dive on things. And one of them was Swoop, and the other one is Spill. Swoop SWOOP. And so I learned some interesting things. First off, I do kind of remember who the Try Guys were. I remember there were four of them, and they would do things like eating every item off the Taco Bell menu. So they would just kind of did like random weird things that just were random and weird. And it was just, the early days of, the early days of YouTube where you could get away with building a channel doing weird random shit like that. So, more power to them. And Ned was one of them. And I think, well, as the lore goes, Ned also used to be called the wife guy because he would talk about his wife a lot. Kind of reminds me of a friend I had in high school who got married, obviously. He was very obsessed with his wife. He probably still is. He was a nice guy. Anyway, the point is, Ned went on then to have an affair. And, of course, that broke up the marriage. This is like the abbreviated version, as I know it. So there's holes in this story. It's okay. So anyway, Ned went on to have an affair, and he got caught. And there are pictures of him having said affair. I guess there's just pictures of him kissing a woman. I don't know how graphic the pictures got. But anyway, he got caught. And the pictures got sent to his wife. And she talks about that during this interview, this conversation with Ariel Fulmer, which is on Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer. We're going to talk about this in a second here. So anyway, he got caught. She found out. They broke up. I'm assuming they broke up. I know they're separated. I'm not entirely sure if they're divorced. I'm a little fuzzy on that detail. I'm sure we'll come up over it. Anyway, they have not been together for 3 years at this point because that's around when he got caught. I know that they have small children together. I don't know the ages of the children. I don't really care. I'm not into that kind of a thing. But I know that because they are parents of these children, that they have been trying to navigate co-parenting and that kind of a thing. And I will say, after watching this interview through two different lenses, plus watching it on its own, I will say I have a lot of sympathy for Ariel Fulmer at this point, and I think that she deserves a great deal of grace going into this, and just the overall suffering that she has been put through because of this asshole. So if that doesn't tell you where I stand, you're not paying attention. But anyway, I do kind of want to go over this with using the 8 principles that we have talked about on this channel over and over and over again at this point. And we'll hit on those as we go through the channel. I will try to leave timestamps. I'm getting better at timestamps, you guys. Down below when we get to each one of the principles. And I will also be referring to notes that I took from both the video with Observe and the 2 videos with Psychology in Seattle. And I probably will have a couple little things that I mentioned that I heard off of Swoop and Spill's videos. I will link all of those videos in the description down below if you want to go watch those in their entirety. So you will have extracurricular videos down in the description should you wish to accept that challenge. That being said, catching up with my own brain. This is Ned Fulmer's attempt at coming back into the spotlight, because it is my understanding that the other 3 Try Guys have managed to kind of move on and still manage to keep their social media-esque jobs. Like, they've still all managed to maintain their own brands and to kind of branch out into the world of social media on their own. And to one degree or another have managed to stay successful at that, right? I don't follow them at all, so I don't really know. But it seems to me in the back of my head, I am vaguely aware of the fact that the other 3 of them have all kind of gone off on their own and done their own thing and are semi-successful at whatever it is that they've chosen to do. Fulmer here is the only one that I'm aware of that, like, kind of just receded into the background, like, you know, Homer Simpson into the bush, right? Where he has stayed for the past 3 years. Okay. So this is him starting to come back out. All right. Before we go much further, though, thank you to everybody who's been supporting the channel. Thank you to my subscribers. Thank you to my members. You guys rock. Thank you to everybody who's going to hit the thumbs up button. As we go through this video, if you have comments or questions about anything that we're going to cover, because we overthink shit here. And if that is not your cup of tea, this is not your video, because that's what we do. When y'all are like, don't you think you're thinking about that too much? No, that's what we do. We overthink. You see anthropology or dark anthropology in the title, just assume it says we're overthinking this. And there you go. So come along for the ride. That's what we're doing here. But as we go through, if you guys have a comment that has to do with something during a moment in the video, if you could leave a timestamp for me in the comment so that way I can figure out what I was talking about, because by the time you guys watch this, I will have forgotten. And it has been very helpful for me in the past few videos to have that timestamp there for me to go click on and figure out what the hell I was talking about so I can figure out how best to answer your questions. All right. So talking about rock bottom with Ned Fulmer. It has come to my attention through both Swoop, I believe both Swoop and Spill. I think Spill was the first one to mention it to me. Got to put my smarty glasses on because we got to reads now. Yeah, that's not going to work. Rock bottom with Ned Fulmer is apparently a rebrand of the parenting channel that he and Ariel had together when they were together. So apparently when Ned decided to make his comeback, he cannibalized the parenting channel that the 2 of them had together and rebranded it as Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer, which is why if you go to this channel, which I will also link, it says it has 64.2K subscribers, which is interesting considering the first video is from 2 weeks ago, which is a conversation with Ariel Fulmer. I, not knowing that at the time that I watched this, thought, oh, wow, okay, he's just still really popular. There we go. That's better. He's not. Maybe he is, but this is not organic growth. The 64.2 subscribers. This is not organic growth. This is him reappropriating, the subscriber base from the parenting channel that he had with his now ex. And I don't know how y'all feel about that. That's up to you. But I know that a lot of people are not okay with it. Hi, my boy. How are you? How do you feel about Ned Fulmer cannibalizing his parenting channel? And the interesting thing about this is Ned Fulmer reappropriating the parenting channel and turning it into his own personal channel is a lot. There's a lot going on, which is also why as we move through this conversations with Ariel Fulmer, we're going to be doing it in 10-minute increments because I have a lot to say and I have a lot of notes. And it's not necessarily like I have a lot of opinions to say. There's just a lot happening in this video. And I think this is my personal opinion. I think Mr. Fulmer is a very good case study in manipulation that has failed. And I think Ariel Fulmer, again, personal opinions, I think Ariel Fulmer displays at points during the interview some excellent behavior of someone who has discovered or has become aware of manipulative behavior from a partner, a spouse, and how she shows, at least on two occasions, how she just shuts him down completely and kind of pulls the rug out from underneath him in general in his attempts to be manipulative towards her, right? I feel like Mr. Fulmer, I'm going to just call him that because I think it's funny. I could call him Ned, I guess. I feel like Ned is kind of a control freak and is trying to regain control over certain aspects of his life in general, but of his narrative and at the same time his wife's narrative and the narrative around his affair, because that has been his defining feature for the past 3 years. And I think it has been preventing him from being able to move forward with his professional career and things like that. Unlike the other three Try guys who have been able to, progress and build and move on with their own personal brands, Ned Fulmer's brand is the guy who cheated on his wife, right? The guy who got caught cheating. And unlike other people who I think get caught cheating, it's particularly damning for him because he had branded himself as the wife guy. And I think because of that, it makes his cheating more egregious than anyone else's cheating, if that makes sense to everyone. My personal opinion on the cheating, I don't actually give a shit. Cheaters be cheaters. I don't think one person's cheating is worse than another person's cheating. I think that's a conversation he and his wife should have had, but I also understand that because the two of them were so fucking public, and Ariel talks about this later on in the interview, because their lives were so public, it was impossible for them to have any kind of privacy during this whole thing. So there was no way for them to have worked through this in private. And I think that's the real like travesty here, because even if there was some way that the two of them might have been able to salvage something, I think the fact that they could not work through this privately in any way probably killed that ability. But that's a discussion about parasocial relationships that we will get to as we work through this. I know, stick with me, we'll get there. So before we get started too far on this, look, I didn't like Fulmer to begin with, but once I found out that he had cannibalized his family channel, that really was the nail in his coffin for me. Not that I like him less. It just really kind of shows me the level of manipulation he is willing to sink to in order to try to rebrand himself and to come back, right? He's willing to sacrifice his family channel in order to get himself back into the limelight. So one of the things that Ned is going to be doing throughout this entire video is he is going to try to spin a narrative of co-suffering. He's going to try to acknowledge Ariel's suffering and Ariel's trauma from this whole experience. But at the same time, he's going to try to co-op that suffering for himself as well. And I'm not saying Ned isn't suffering. I'm really not. But Ned is trying to be a co-victim in this when the reality of the situation is he isn't. He is the cause of this situation. And because of that, Ariel is by default the victim. And there are many situations throughout this entire video where he tries to take her pain, her suffering, and her anger, and he tries to pull it onto himself, not in a, oh, I acknowledge that I am the cause of these things, but he tries to go, oh, me too. I have that problem too. Oh, yeah, I'm suffering as well. Oh, yeah, yeah. We're having the same, we have the same problems. And it's like, no, you don't have the same problems. But in a way, it's being dismissive of her pain and her suffering. And also, it's trying to reframe him as the victim as well. So he's trying to kind of get a little piece of her sympathy, of the audience's sympathy towards her, because there seems to be a lot more sympathy towards her than there is towards him. And he seems to be trying to like grab a piece of that sympathy that is around her and get it for himself. And that is something that kind of goes through this entire video. And it's a little it's very obvious to me, and it seems to be very obvious to observe. And I caught Psychology in Seattle clocking it on more than one occasion. And I just kind of wanted to mention it before we even get into the video, because it's something that happens constantly throughout the video. So the other thing he does a lot of is he has a lot of like coercive behavior towards Ariel throughout this video. And just like his body language in general, like Observe talks more about his nonverbal language, but in general, his body language, once we get into the interview part of this, is the way it's set up. He seems to be very agitated through the entire interview. And one could say that he is that way because it's an awkward conversation between him and his ex. And you'll notice that in the interview that she seems very like almost relaxed at certain points, and there's certain points where she's clearly not. But through a lot of the interview, you'll notice that she sits forward, she's more engaged with the microphone. She's not as closed off as he is. She seems to be more proactive, almost aggressive at certain points, where he is very closed. He's very pulled in. He keeps his head down. He keeps his hands folded. He seems very like pious, almost like he is regretful, or like he's like taking his wax from her, and it's very performative. Um, and Observe really hits the nail on the head with that one. Um, he says his posture and his head dips and such, they read as submissive, where Ariel's eye contact, her upright posture, and her appearance of confidence makes her seem more aggressive. And this comes off as ritualized abasement, where he is trying to look guilty, but he's performing meekness, while his partner seems to be holding sovereignty. However, this is only framing her as the dominant one, because you have to keep in mind this is on his channel. She is being framed in this way on his channel. He has control over how this video is being recorded, how it is being edited, and how it is being presented to the public in the end, right? So in the end, Ned is the one reinforcing how Ariel is being perceived by the public in the finished product, right? So he is the one who is reinforcing how Ariel appears and how he himself is being observed by the public. So though he in the moment seems to be the meek one and she seems to be the aggressor, in reality, that is not what's really happening. And the reason why we know that that's what's going on is from a lot of the language and the other forms of nonverbal communication that are occurring throughout the entire interview. And again, I wanted to talk about that before we get into the interview because, again, that is something that happens throughout the entire interview. So it's worth mentioning at the beginning so that you all have it in your heads. Now, I know, stick with me. Before we even get into Ned's interview with Ariel, Ned has a little apology video that he does at the very beginning. And there is a lot happening in this apology video. And let me pull up my actual notes for this. So before Ned even starts this video, or his conversation with his wife, now keep in mind, this is the first podcast episode on his new channel, which is not a new channel. It's a cannibalized channel that he and his wife used to have about parenting. Okay? I think it's only fair that you interview your wife on the channel that the two of you used to have together. But anyway, so he decides that his first episode needs to be about him being apologetic towards his wife about the affair that he had with her, he had on her 3 years prior. And before he even does that, he decides to have an apology video attached to the front of that. It's a typical YouTuber apology video, I guess, in that it feels insincere for a number of reasons. So there's a lot of moral masking that's going on in here where Ned is trying to control the conversation by framing things the way he wants us to perceive them. He is framing he's defining things the way he wants them to be so that we follow his language and not definitions that we might have had otherwise. I'll point those out when we get to them. He's trying to create a parasocial intimacy with the audience throughout this apology to the point and the detriment of his apparent apology to his wife Ariel, where he actually downplays the damage that he did to his wife Ariel and groups her in with the overall audience itself, which is, I think, kind of telling in a way. He tries to play this whole experience off as a form of transactional altruism, where he is gifting not only Ariel with this chance to be on his show and air her grievances against him, but he is also gifting us, the audience, with the chance to watch this as if this is some kind of great gift from him to us, some kind of closure for his audience between him about this affair. And I think he is hoping that with this podcast episode that this is like, all right, guys, this is the last time I'm going to talk about this. I think maybe that's what he was intending for this to be. It just didn't, in my opinion, just didn't work out that way. He also, this is where he starts planting the seeds for his strategic victimhood. These are all principles we've talked about in the past. His strategic victimhood, where he starts talking about how painful this was for him, and he starts co-opting Ariel's suffering as his own, and he starts saying things like she needs this in order for her to move on, and so he is going to witness her suffering as if he is the one who is actually actively doing something. And it's not Ariel who is the one who is the one who has to actually re-suffer through the retelling and living through the memories of the events that she went through when she found out that he was cheating, right? So it's where he starts planting all of these seeds into the heads of the audience as we get into this. The entire setup of this apology video is I think Observe puts it best, where it's ritualistic purity, because everything is so whitewashed, right? Everything has been designed as a signal, as a cue for innocence and sacramental ritualistic purity, right? everything is white. Everything is neutral. Everything is some kind of white or beige or gray, or if there is a color, it is a mute earth tone. I understand that that's very popular right now, especially with the TikTok aesthetic right now, that this whole color scheme behind him is very popular. However, choices were made, right? Another thing to observe in the background here is that everything is in place. Everything is in place. There are perfect gaps between the objects behind him. There are perfect gaps between the appliances behind him. Everything is stacked. I mean, it is not like pencil perfect, but it's pretty damn organized, right? This is not a kitchen that people live in. This is a kitchen that has been professionally staged. And then on top of it, we have Ned himself. He is on a white background wearing a white polo. That might actually be off pink, but either way, the way it's reading on the camera is this is white. So he's got a white background, he's got a white t-shirt. He himself is a very pale person. Normally you would want to put somebody like that in a contrasting color so that they would pop out a little bit more. So again, choices were made here to make him look as innocent as possible before he even starts talking, right? So this is a very thought about, very ritualized appearance before he even begins talking. So that we're like, oh, who's this little angel boy sitting here? Ah, he looks harmless. What could he possibly have to apologize for? What is it, little angel baby? What did you do wrong? Right? And then he'll start telling us, oh yeah, I cheated on my wife. And we're like, oh, well, I mean, I guess it couldn't have been that bad. I mean, I guess, right? So there's that. Right. Yeah, okay, we'll get to that in a second. Let me get my notes. Right. So there is one thing I'm going to point out when we get to the end of Ned's apology. And then we're almost done with this introductory video. I told you. It's going to take us a minute to get through these. There's a lot going on in these videos. All right, anyway. I do have them sped up. I have this video sped up. It is time at a quarter. So if him and his wife then later seem like they are talking particularly quickly, that is because they've been sped up. I will point out at times there are long pauses. There are long, deep silences. And those are still long even after they've been sped up. So that just kind of points out to you how awkward this conversation is at certain points. But anyway, all right, let's go ahead and get started. This is, again, this is a conversation with Ariel Fulmer on Rock Bottom with Ned Fulmer. This is Ned Fulmer doing his little apology. So let's see how fast we can get through this.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Ned Fulmer.
How are you then?
3 years ago, I cheated on my wife with my producer.
Some people have pointed out the verbal fry in his voice here and how he is using it as a way of making himself seem more relatable. Verbal fry is usually something that is pointed out in the way women speak. Women, typically it's used as a way of attacking the way women speak. So the fact that people are pointing out that he's using the verbal fry as a way to make himself seem more relatable and like less threatening, I suppose, is interesting to me because he definitely has some verbal fry going on here. But it's just the fact that verbal fry is so associated with the feminine voice, because his voice is very deep. It is not a feminine voice. But the act of him using verbal fry is enough for people to be like, oh my God, he's trying to make himself seem less threatening because he's using verbal fry. I just find that very interesting that that's the depth to which people have associated verbal fry with the female speech pattern and female voice. It's always fascinated me how people will be dismissive of verbal fry just because it is a typical female voice pattern. And it's just, I don't know how to explain it to you guys as I don't know how to explain it in a way that you'll understand how fascinated I am by this without going off on a rant about sexism. But anyway,
It became a massive public scandal that caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. I know that I represented myself as a kind of wife guy who talked about his relationship and put that out there for public consumption. And you, as a viewer, I know that I broke your trust.
this performative stuttering and hand gesturing is a way of him trying to kind of break the monotony and bring us in. But it's also a way of him trying to create that parasocial intimacy. Something interesting going on here, though, is he is acknowledging the parasocial relationship that he created with his audience and the image that he created for the audience as the wife guy and how he leaned into that image. The other part that I find really interesting here is he admits that this was a painful event in history and in the lives of people around him, but he hasn't mentioned his wife. He's mentioned everyone else, but not his wife. Not yet. He does go on to mention her, but not yet. He has to mention everyone else first. He's not apologizing to his wife yet. He's apologizing to the audience. I find that really fascinating here.
I betrayed my spouse, co-workers, friends, family, and I betrayed you.
You didn't betray me. I don't know who the hell you are.
And I know it's not just about cheating, that I was a company owner and having a relationship with a producer, was engaged and friends with all of our friends and coworkers.
It's very important here to understand the language that he is using in this moment. I was a company owner and I had an affair with a producer. You'll hear a lot of people reframe affairs in ways, especially when they're affairs with power imbalances in them. They will try to reframe them in ways that like minimalize the power imbalance. And I don't personally honestly think they do it because they're honestly trying to minimize the power imbalance. I think they honestly don't see the power imbalance. Like Ned may honestly not realize the power imbalance he has as the owner of the company that the producer worked for, right? Now, did that necessarily have any influence over the relationship? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Wasn't there. Don't even remember it really happening. Everything I know about this affair, really, I've learned from watching these videos recently, because there's like this much of my memory that I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. So there's all of that. But there are situations where people like Ned will use their power over their employees to get them to do things like have affairs with them. So the use of power imbalances against employees to get them to do things like have an affair is something that needs to be kept in mind, especially in these types of situations, because we're not going to hear from the woman he had the affair with. And he has already stated she had a fiance. All right. So what was the motivation then for her to cheat on her fiance? Right? I don't know what his motivations were to cheat on his wife, but he seems to be the aggressor here. And again, he is in the position of power. So was the producer employee, was she motivated just in general to have an affair on her fiance? Or was she coerced because you're her boss and you put her in a position where she couldn't say no, or she felt like she couldn't say no, which is a similar situation. Whether she could or couldn't is she felt like she couldn't. It's the same as being in a situation where she could not, right? Psychology is a weird thing. But regardless, Ned decides to use language that removes that power imbalance from the conversation. She was a producer, not my employee, not an employee of the company, just a producer. Right. A producer for the company that you owned. Ergo, she was an employee. Her income was tied to you and your ability to fire her at any given moment because you owned the company. You and the other 3 guys, I am assuming. Right? It's just always fascinating to me how people will reframe these types of imbalances to make it seem less egregious or to make the other party seem like they had more of an equal choice in the affair than they may or may not have had.
Like it was.
Also, considering how staged this apology already is and how it's clear he is reading from a script, these weird moments where he chooses to like stutter or chooses these what would in any other situation seem like an organic pause in a conversation, it causes this to read as more I was going to say more fake. It causes it to feel faker than it might possibly be. It's staged. It makes it feel less authentic than it is obviously meant to come off as. And that's not working in his favor in this situation.
Understandably, a messy and devastating situation for everyone involved. And I was the cause of it. I did that. And I can't change it. I can't change the past. I can own it and accept it and try to change how I show up differently in the future.
The audible gulp. So I wanted to come back to him going on and saying, I did that. I can't change the past. I can only control how I show up in the future. It's a moral masking and a narrative control tactic where he's trying to reframe the harm and control the narrative going forward. In essence, in a way, he is correct. He cannot change the past, and he sounds like he is owning what has happened. He did do that. He did have an affair. He can't change what has happened. It is in the past. These things cannot be altered. And yes, the only way forward is forward. However, the way that he chooses to do it and just his overall basically piss poor presentation of this, his apology is not great, in my opinion. It is doing him no favors. Let me put it that way. It makes it come off incredibly insincere, and so it's hard to take it seriously, and it just kind of sounds like the little boy who got his hand caught in the cookie jar, and he's like, oh, yeah, I just, basically, I won't let you catch me in the future. That's kind of how it comes off. Like, there's no actual remorse here. So, and again, there's something very important that he hasn't said yet. I don't know if you guys have picked up on it. So, we'll keep going, though.
So, I wanted to say that I'm sorry. I hurt you. And to make amends over time.
That weird extended eye contact with the camera while he says, "I'm sorry, I hurt you, and I'm trying to make amends." That is the tried and true mark of, like, I am trying to impress upon you how sincere I am about this moment. Like, it is an uncomfortable length of time to be making eye contact with the camera, because he's making eye contact with the audience, right? He's not apologizing to his wife, he's apologizing to the audience, right? And it's an uncomfortable length of time that he is spending making eye contact with us, because he wants us to know how sincere he is. And you will notice that immediately, the moment he has done, he looks away, right? Because even he's uncomfortable making that long of an eye contact with a camera, an inanimate object. Now, there might be somebody on the other side of the camera, right? He may have his camera just set up and he may just be talking to it in his kitchen. That's a possibility. But he might actually have another producer standing behind the camera there, watching him, encouraging him. There might even be a teleprompter there. I don't know.
And one step is to publicly witness the pain of my partner, Ariel. This is a conversation with Ariel in this video. It's
to publicly witness the pain of my partner, Ariel. Not my ex, but my partner. He still hasn't relinquished possession of her in a normal way. Like, most people would refer to their ex-wife as my ex-wife. But he says my partner, as if they are still actively together. And I understand that they are actively co-parenting. I get that part. But I don't typically hear people refer to another person as their partner in a relationship sense unless they are together, right? So that language to me, I find very strange for him, because I don't recall hearing her say that. But the other thing here is, I'm going to witness her pain. He's putting the emotional labor on himself in this situation. He is the one who now has to suffer, not Ariel. He's just going to witness, he's just going to let her go off, and he is going to suffer. He is going to be the one to sit there and just let her go off on him. And that is kind of how the setup of the podcast is during their interview, quote unquote interview, conversation, however you want to put it. He does kind of do that. We talked about that, like, performative meekness throughout the interview. So he does fully intend to make this appear as if he is just sitting there absorbing her hostility towards him. I don't think it really comes off the way he was hoping it would, but that does seem to be how he initially wanted it to come off, how he wanted it to be set up. So
it's painful at times. It's honest, vulnerable, brutal, but it's necessary for her to move forward. And
it's necessary for her to move forward, not me, not us, not it's necessary to put this whole thing to bed. It's necessary for her to move forward. So again, he is sacrificing for her betterment. He is the one who is putting himself forward, right? This is all for her. He is the one who must suffer for her.
And I'm grateful for the chance to witness it.
And he is grateful for the chance to witness it. I would be very interested to see her reaction when she heard these words come out of his mouth, because she's not there right now. I would love to have been a fly on the wall when she heard these words come out of his mouth. I would just love to see how she reacted overall to this, because it is so condescending and so appropriating of her suffering and her pain and her trauma from this whole situation, right? And don't get me wrong, I don't think every person who's ever been cheated on has gone through like immense amounts of trauma. This particular this particular situation is is so bad on so many levels for so many different reasons that aren't necessarily him cheating on her. It's the domino effect of Ned cheating on Ariel, and the fact that he is such a public figure when it occurs, and then the public itself starts reacting, and just the way she gets sucked into all of it. That's what causes, I think, the majority of why this is such a traumatic event, excuse me, for her. But anyway,
Um, as disappointed as we were that something so private and painful became such a public spectacle, I get why people were so outraged, and I understand that that is the reason that she can't move forward
that's the reason she can't move forward.
with any sort of public thing without addressing this. So this is that. This is a conversation where we answer your questions. We share what we've been up to these last 3 years and what you can expect from us moving forward. It's about an hour long, and I know that from my perspective, I want to tell stories of curiosity and empathy, and I want them to be meaningful and have value in people's lives. So I hope that you find this impactful. So please join me for this conversation with Ariel Fulmer.
So he wants this podcast to be about, he wants it to be impactful, and he wants it to be about, these things that he mentioned, and I've completely lost my words at this point, but he wants them to be this thing. And so to launch that podcast, he has decided to bring his ex-wife on as his first guest, so that he can witness her pain and allow her a public platform so that she can move on, because it's the only way that she can do public things. Like what? I mean, don't get me wrong, she does go on to talk about how, like, she's terrified of being in the public eye, but she also talks about how she's able to make friends, and, she still takes her kids to school, and she still seems to be able to function in public. So what favor are you actually doing her, Ned? It seems like she's doing you the favor of being on your new podcast, and you're trying to turn it around to make it sound like you're the good Samaritan here, and you're helping your socially crippled ex-wife, excuse me, who you still refer to as your partner, who you haven't been with in 3 years. Don't get me wrong, I know that they're co-parenting, and I know they spend time together because they both mention it. She doesn't seem particularly thrilled about that, but they do mention it. I mentioned that there is something that Ned never says throughout this entire apology. And he, unless I have tuned it out all 3 times now that I have listened to this fucking apology, he never says he's wrong. He never says what he did was wrong. He apologizes for doing it. He apologizes for the pain that it caused. He's sorry that you feel bad. He's sorry that you felt betrayed. He's sorry that Ariel's upset. He's sorry that she can't move on. He's sorry that everybody else had a bad reaction to his affair. He's sorry for that. He's sorry he got caught, essentially. But at no point does he say what he did was wrong. He never says, I was wrong. what I did was wrong. He never says those words through this entire apology. There's 4 minutes of this apology, and at no point does he say, I was wrong. Right? I find that incredibly interesting because you would think in this sort of a situation where you are acknowledging that this affair effectively ruined your life and dragged your ex-wife through a public circus that she had no desire to be part of, you would think at some point you would say, this was wrong. I should not have done that. This was wrong of me. Just the words, I was wrong, or this was wrong. You would expect to hear those words, those exact words at some point in this apology. Unless I am deaf, and maybe I am, please, if I am, put the timestamp in because I did not hear those words. Right? And if I am deaf, I will apologize and I'll walk this back. But I never hear him say, I was wrong during this entire apology. But what I do hear him say is, I'm sorry you're upset. I'm sorry you all caught me. I'm sorry Ariel's upset. I'm sorry that she can't move forward. I'm doing this for her. I'm going to be suffering so that she can move forward. I'm allowing her on my platform for my first podcast that I would rather be about other uplifting topics, but we're going to start with this one so that Ariel can move on with life. And also, by the way, this is the last time we're talking about this. That's what this is. This is the last time we're talking about my affair. Okay? I don't think this is going to work. This is only 2 weeks old, this conversation as of today, because today is October the 2nd, and this was posted on September 17th of 2025. So I don't think this is going to work, but this is only 2 weeks old. And I'm just going off of the reception that I've seen online from people. All right. I did say that we were going to do this in 10-minute increments. I didn't realize how long it was going to take me to get through the first 4 minutes. However, it's a good point for us to stop at because this is Ned Fulmer's apology, and then we're going to jump into the actual interview between him and Ariel. I think instead of doing 5 minutes of that and then cutting it off, I think since we're almost at an hour, I think we're just going to stop here, and then the next video we'll pick up at that one, and maybe we can get 15 whole minutes. My goal is actually to get more than 10 minutes in a video. It's just my notes are broken up into 10-minute increments because I know myself. So anyway, my point is, we're going to cut this video here. If you have made it this far in the video, go ahead and put a white object. That's not going to show up in the chat, but anyway, or in the comment section. But anyway, go ahead and put a white box, circle, heart, something down in the comment section because we have a very, very white background here. Let me know what you guys think of his apology. On Psychology in Seattle, Dr. Kirk has a rubric for an apology. He has a 10-point apology rubric, and he gave Ned a grade of B- to a C+ to a B- on his rubric for his apology. And that's in the first video. Again, I'll have all that linked down below. What do you guys think of the apology? Do you feel like it was sincere? If you do feel like it is sincere, why? If you don't feel like it's sincere, because I don't know, honestly, where I sit. I think he is sincere in that he wants people to get over it and he wants to move on. But again, I didn't hear the words, I was wrong or this was wrong at any point. So what I'm hearing is a very elaborate, I'm sorry that you're upset apology, which isn't necessarily an apology. So what I'm hearing is a very long non-apology where he's really not he really doesn't seem to think what he did was wrong. He's just sorry he got caught, and he's sorry Ariel's mad at him, especially since she's left him in some capacity. But he's also not accepting that because he's not calling her his ex. He doesn't call her his ex-wife. He refers to her as my partner. They're not together. So why use that language? So what I hear is just a lot of him like living in denial, but at the same time not accepting responsibility for his actions. That's what I'm hearing. That's my personal take, right? Y'all can disagree. That's perfectly fine. Do leave a timestamp in your comments down below. Did you watch Sleepless in Seattle? I'm determined to call his channel that. Psychology in Seattle. Have you watched their videos? Did you watch Observe? Did you watch anybody else's? What's your personal take? Again, what do you think of his apology? What little details did you notice? Did you pick up on something that I didn't pick up on? That's perfectly acceptable as well. I mean, obviously I'm perfect and I don't miss anything, but maybe you saw something I didn't. But do by all means, don't forget your emoji is a white object of some variety. Please leave a timestamp with your comment down below so that I remember what we were talking about. And yeah, don't forget to hit the like button. Help me out with the algorithm, you guys. YouTube's being YouTubey again, and I don't know what they want from me at this point. I really don't know. So if you could like the video, that would be amazing. And that's all I've got for you guys. So hopefully I will see everybody in the next one. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting the channel. Thank you to my subscribers. Thank you to my members. You guys rock. Thank you to everybody who's going to hit the thumbs up button. And I will see everybody in part 2 of this, where we will start the actual interview between Ned and Ariel Fulmer. I will see everybody then. Bye.
This is my outro music. You can't copyright strike me because it's just me singing. This is my outro music. Thank you for watching. See you next time.